Hi there, it's Helen. You'd think a woman my age, 68, silver-haired, widowed, would be used to surprises. But nothing prepared me for the moment my son and daughter-in-law stood in the foyer of my brand-new penthouse and said, all smiles and sugary charm, "We heard you bought a penthouse, so we'll move in and make peace." Peace. That word. It curled off Clara's tongue like the last puff of a lit cigarette, elegant, practiced, toxic. David nodded beside her like a man who'd already signed the lease in his mind. My mind was still reeling from the champagne toast I'd had with the realtor just an hour earlier. And now this, my only child, and the woman who hadn't spoken to me in months, suitcases in tow, inviting themselves into the sanctuary I had barely even unpacked. I stood there in the hallway, barefoot on marble, wearing the cashmere robe I'd bought as a gift to myself. The paint still smelled fresh. I hadn't even had time to pick curtains, but already they were claiming space, literally and emotionally. "I thought we could use a fresh start," Clara continued, walking past me as if she already owned the place. "You've got 3 bedrooms after all, and that city view, so therapeutic." David didn't meet my eyes. He never does when he knows she's leading him somewhere he doesn't want to go. I forced a smile. "You're right. It's spacious." Then, turning toward the window where the skyline glittered like a promise, I whispered the word to myself again, "Peace." And just like that, it shattered. The clink of Clara's designer luggage on my new hardwood floors was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was the sound of old wounds reopening, softly, politely, as if it were a favor. David lingered near the door, clearly uncomfortable but saying nothing. I suppose in his mind this was a mother-son reunion, a healing gesture. But for me, it felt like a carefully orchestrated invasion. "You don't mind, do you?" Clara asked, placing her espresso machine on my kitchen counter like it was a housewarming gift. "I thought this could be a good chance to rebuild what we lost. Water under the bridge and all." That bridge had collapsed 2 years ago when Clara told me, with a saccharine smile, that maybe it was time I stepped back from David's finances. The same finances I had helped stabilize after his 3rd failed startup and the 2nd mortgage I secretly paid off. But she didn't want a mother-in-law. She wanted a silent investor. And now they were back, with folded cashmere throws, organic oat milk, and smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. David finally spoke. "Mom, we were thinking, this place is so big, and the timing just felt right. After everything, maybe this is a sign." A sign. God forgive me. But if it was a sign, it felt more like a warning. Still, I said nothing. I watched them settle in. Clara started opening cabinets. David took a call on the balcony, and I stood by the sink, watching the city blink at me through glass walls, as if asking, "What will you do now, Helen?" And the truth was, I didn't know, but I did know this. Peace doesn't come wrapped in recycled apologies and temporary smiles. Peace is earned, and they hadn't earned their place in this home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for now, I let the curtain fall. "Of course," I said. "Stay as long as you like." Their smiles widened, but inside, something else had started moving, an old, quiet engine revving back to life. I was Margaret Hayes once. Now I was Helen, and I hadn't survived 68 years to be cornered in my own home. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't the unfamiliar creaks of the new apartment or the distant hum of traffic from 20 floors below. It was Clara's laugh echoing down the hallway, too loud, too late, too practiced. It was David's quiet footsteps pacing from room to room like a man already regretting something he couldn't undo. It was the ache in my bones, not from age, but from instinct. I'd felt it before, the moment someone tries to make your kindness their currency. I sat at the kitchen island long after midnight, a cup of cold tea in my hands, watching the soft blue light under the cabinets cast long shadows on the floor. The penthouse had been my one wild decision, my lighthouse after years of silence and sacrifice. It had taken nearly all the money I'd saved since Frank died. I had sold the house, the one we built together, the one where I raised David, hosted birthday parties, and watched the wallpaper curl after too many summers. I sold it quietly, no family meetings, no announcement, because it was mine, just mine, for once. And I chose this apartment, not for its sleek design or the rooftop garden, though both were lovely, but for its silence. The walls didn't carry the sounds of other lives. The floor didn't squeak with history. It was new, blank, free, until now. By morning, the illusion was gone. Clara was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair perfect, scrolling her phone with one manicured finger while sipping an oat milk latte. She looked up and smiled like we were college roommates. "Hope you don't mind. I rearranged the spice rack. You had paprika next to cinnamon." I didn't respond. I just reached for the kettle and turned my back. "Also," she added lightly, "David's been under a lot of stress lately. This change will be good for him. You've always been his anchor, you know." An anchor. I almost laughed. Anchors hold ships in place. They don't carry them. David came in then, rumpled and soft-voiced, carrying his laptop and looking 10 years older than he had at our last brunch. "I'll only be working in the study until we find something," he said. "This is temporary." "Of course," I said. That was what I said now. It was easier than asking, "Find what? When?" Easier than saying what I was really thinking. "Why did you come at all?" Because the truth was I hadn't seen them in months, not a birthday card, not a phone call, not even when I fell last winter and had to spend 2 nights in hospital. I'd told no one, not even David. It had been easier that way. You stop expecting things when silence becomes the family's most fluent language. But silence doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you start loving yourself, too. Still, I was afraid. Afraid of the old rhythms reasserting themselves. Afraid I was falling back into the very role I'd fought so hard to outgrow, the generous, agreeable, unnecessary woman who waits quietly in the corners of other people's stories. They stayed. A day turned into 2. 2 into 4. Clara found the wine glasses I'd hidden in the top shelf and began arranging them more sensibly. David took Zoom calls in my reading chair. They offered to help with groceries, then filled my kitchen with organic kale and grain-free crackers and a subscription box of rare Scandinavian butter. I laughed in the bathroom, not the joyful kind. "Make peace," Clara had said. But peace, I was starting to remember, requires boundaries. And I had crossed none, but they'd already crossed all of mine. The next week I heard them whispering behind my bedroom door. They thought I was asleep. I wasn't. "She won't say no," Clara said. "She never has." And David, my son, answered with something that sounded like guilt and resignation. "She's lonely." I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling fan. They were right about one thing. I had been lonely. But loneliness doesn't make you weak. It makes you careful. And suddenly I wasn't just listening, I was remembering. How Clara once told me my decorating style was quaintly depressing. How David stopped calling when I asked about the money he owed me. How the last family dinner ended in silence after I said I wasn't funding their latest investment idea. I thought about all the little ways they had erased me over the years, kind erasures, polite, dismissive. They didn't shout me out of their lives, they just stopped making space for my voice. But here, in this new place, I had started to find it again. In the way I chose which lamp to buy. In the books I stacked beside my bed. In the quiet joy of sleeping in until noon if I wanted. And now they were here, talking about me like I was furniture, rearranging my kitchen, resetting the narrative. No, no more. That night I sat at my desk and opened a blank journal. I wrote one sentence. This piece is not for sale. I underlined it twice. Then I made a list, a very short one. Count the days, watch what they ask for. Don't argue, observe. Remember who this home belongs to. And at the bottom I wrote, don't let them plant roots in stolen soil. The pen shook in my hand, not from fear, but from the strength it takes to finally draw a line. I suppose I should have seen it coming. Clara had always been a master of timing. She'd wait until just the right moment, after a meal, after a compliment, after David said something warm, to slip in a request like it was part of the conversation. This time it happened on a Thursday evening, as golden light spilled across the kitchen island and the smell of roasted garlic drifted in from the oven. I had cooked. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or maybe it was because some part of me still remembered when cooking for my son felt like an offering instead of an obligation. David was swirling wine in his glass. My glass, mind you, and Clara was perched on the bar stool like she was in a design magazine. She always had that way of occupying space, like she was doing the room a favor. "I've been thinking," she said lightly, her hand resting on David's wrist. "This arrangement, it's really working. The apartment feels like home already." My hands stiffened around the dish towel. David smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's comfortable. Comfortable. That word again. The thing people say when they're settling in somewhere they didn't pay for." Clara leaned forward, elbows on the marble. "And you know, with your penthouse and everything, it only makes sense for us to help out long-term, share responsibilities, make it feel more equal." I said nothing. Not yet. She took that as encouragement. "So," she continued, reaching into her tote bag, "I spoke to a friend who's a notary. It's just a basic agreement, like a cohabitation thing. Nothing scary. It just clarifies that we're living here and contributing, so we have a bit more security." She slid a folder across the counter. I didn't open it, but I saw the title through the cream envelope. Property Rights and Residential Occupancy. My mouth went dry. David cleared his throat. "It's just paperwork, Mom. It doesn't change anything. Clara thought it'd be helpful. You know, peace of mind." Peace again. Funny how often people invoke peace when they're really after control. I picked up the folder, not to read it, but to feel the weight of it. It was heavy. And it wasn't just a suggestion. It was the first stone in a foundation. They were building something here, not with me, on me. I looked at David, my only son, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him clearly. Tired, a little afraid. A man who didn't want to fight his wife and didn't want to face the truth of what she was doing. A man who had grown used to the softness of my silence. "You think I should sign this?" I asked, my voice quiet. David looked away. "It's just formality. Like backup." Clara smiled. "It's standard. Couples do this all the time." I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Couples," I said softly. "But we're not a couple, are we, Clara?" Her expression flickered, just for a moment, and there it was, the first crack. "I'll look it over," I said, tucking the envelope under my arm. "Later." Clara beamed. "Of course, no rush." But there was a rush. I could feel it. That same quiet, urgent momentum that always happens before someone takes what they've already decided is theirs. That night, I sat on the balcony wrapped in my robe, the document unopened beside me. I listened to the city, sirens, horns, the low buzz of life happening beyond these walls. I held a glass of sherry in one hand and the envelope in the other. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just listened. Because some truths don't shout. They whisper, like the one that had been nudging at me for weeks. They're not moving in. They're moving me out. I didn't need to read the document to know what it meant. Clara wanted proof. She wanted residency. She wanted leverage. Because when you live somewhere long enough and the paperwork lines up, it doesn't matter who paid for it. Possession is power. And suddenly everything made sense. The sudden sweetness, the talk of peace, the oat milk in my fridge, and the clothes hanging in my guest closet. They weren't building a home with me. They were building a case against me. It was the slow theft of presence, the kind that comes wrapped in smiles and faux gratitude, and we're just helping. And it was working. I looked out at the skyline. The lights blinked like slow, knowing eyes. I had one choice: wait for the inevitable or get ahead of it. I walked inside, turned on the lamp, and opened my laptop. The screen lit up. The cursor blinked. I opened a new document and began typing. Incident log, Penthouse 2104, March 2. Clara moved in 2 suitcases and toiletries, claimed temporary stay, no written agreement. March 5th. David began working from reading room, calls it his study. March 7th. Clara installed espresso machine and rearranged kitchen items without permission. March 10th. Clara presented document for cohabitation, requested signature. I kept typing, every word a line in the sand, every line a boundary reclaimed. Because I had learned something in my old house back when I was invisible. People don't take everything all at once. They take it by degrees, a shelf, a chair, a signature. And if you don't stop them, they'll take your name next. That night, I slept with the document on my nightstand. Not because I feared it, but because I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. And it didn't involve a pen. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had changed. David came into the kitchen in his usual quiet way, soft t-shirt, rumpled hair, gratitude barely whispered. "Smells amazing, Mom." Clara followed, lips already painted, dressed in what I could only describe as boutique armor, tailored white blouse, gold earrings, and that faint scent of money trying to pass for elegance. "I hope you slept well," she said. "I've been thinking we should turn that second guest room into a home office. David's back is killing him from that little reading chair." She was always thinking, wasn't she? But I only nodded and poured the coffee. Over blueberry pancakes, we talked about nothing, weather, headlines, her new idea for a skincare line. But beneath it all, I felt the pulse of her plan humming louder, more insistent. She was pushing forward, step by step, as if I were just an old woman too tired to notice the floor shifting under her. But I noticed. God help me, I noticed everything. After breakfast, I waited for them to leave. Clara had a facial, David had a meeting downtown, and the moment the door shut behind them, I sprang into motion. I took the envelope she'd given me, the one with her little trick dressed up as peace, and slid it into the safe behind my bookshelf. Then I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. Yes, I have a lawyer. His name is Owen, and he used to represent my husband's company. Smart man. Wears socks with whales on them. Doesn't smile often, but when he does, it means something. "Owen," I said, "I need you to review a cohabitation agreement someone's trying to get me to sign." He didn't hesitate. "Who?" "My daughter-in-law." There was a pause. I could almost hear him sit straighter in his chair. "Send it over," he said. "Now." I scanned it. He called me back 10 minutes later. "Helen," he said, "this isn't a cohabitation agreement. It's a residency and asset clause buried in legal fluff. If you'd signed this, they could claim a portion of the property. At best, it would tie you up in court for months. At worst..." "I lose the apartment," I finished for him. He didn't deny it. I thanked him, hung up, and just sat there for a long time. Clara had always been smart, but this was ruthless. That night, I didn't say a word. I let them talk about spring decor and David's latest contract negotiations. I let them pour wine and toast to new beginnings. I even let Clara gush about the color she planned to paint the office. but in my head I was already drawing the exit plan. It was time to remind them whose name was on the deed. 2 days later, I booked a weekend away. I told them I was going to visit an old friend in the hill country. Margaret, bless her heart, she played along perfectly. She even called while they were in the room. "Don't forget your scarf," she said loudly. "The wind's awful up here." Clara beamed. "How lovely, Helen. Take your time. We'll hold down the fort." I smiled. "Oh, I'm counting on it." I left Friday morning, drove 2 blocks, parked, walked back up the service stairwell, and waited. You learn a lot by being invisible. That evening, I sat silently in the stairwell outside my own door, notebook in hand. At 6:07 p.m., Clara answered a call. "She's out for the weekend. We can have the contractor in on Saturday. Just mark it as consultation. If it goes well, we can get the sublease drawn up by next month." I stared at the cement floor, my pen frozen. Sublease. She was planning to rent out my second guest room. She wasn't building a home, she was building revenue. At 6:18, she poured wine and laughed to someone named Erica over speakerphone. Honestly, I give her 3 more months, tops. She's slowing down. Once she goes into assisted living, this place is ours. The view alone is worth $500,000. My heart thudded in my chest, not from shock, but from the confirmation. She was betting on my exit, not just passively, actively. I went home Sunday night with a plan. Monday morning, I met Owen at his office. "She's planning to create tenancy," I said, "and she's speaking as if ownership is inevitable." He nodded. "I can file an official notice revoking permission for residence. That way, if she contests later, we have proof she was here only as a guest." I nodded. "Do it. And Helen," he added gently, "you're going to have to serve her in writing, no more subtle hints." "I know," I said. "I'm done with subtle." That evening, Clara and David returned from yoga. "How was Margaret?" Clara asked, already unzipping her hoodie. I held out an envelope. "This is for you." She took it, looked down, then up. "What is this?" "It's a formal revocation of your guest status. You have 7 days to vacate. After that, you'll be considered trespassing." David stepped forward, confused. "Mom, what?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "You've always had a place in my heart, David. But this home, this life, it's mine." Clara stared at the paper, pale and trembling. "You're joking." "I'm not," I said calmly. "You made a bet on my absence. But I'm still here. And this time I'm not moving. The next 5 days were the longest of my life. Every morning I woke to the soft dread of what I had done, and every evening I reminded myself why I'd done it. Because there's a point in every woman's life when she has to choose comfort or clarity, and the truth was no longer negotiable. Clara didn't speak to me. She slithered around the apartment like a ghost with good hair, all cold glances and calculated silences. She stopped wearing her silk robes in the mornings, started slamming drawers louder, making little passive noises of outrage she never voiced out loud. But David, he floundered. He'd shuffle into the kitchen, mumble half-hearted greetings, then disappear to his so-called study. The man looked like he was aging by the hour. On the 6th day, I came home from the store to find Clara on my sofa, arms folded, staring at the skyline like it owed her something. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, not turning her head. "No?" I said, calmly setting down my shopping bag. "You tried to turn my home into a revenue stream and my absence into a business model." She sighed. "You don't understand how hard it's been for us. The business, the debt." "And I've helped," I said softly, over and over, quietly. "But this was a theft you dressed in politeness." Her lip curled. "And what? You think kicking us out makes you powerful? You think you're teaching us a lesson?" I looked her square in the eye. "I'm teaching myself that I deserve peace, that I don't have to fund my own erasure to keep the illusion of family." Her mouth opened, ready to fire, but David walked in, holding the envelope I'd served. "Clara," he said, voice rough, "we're leaving." She spun around. "Excuse me?" "I spoke to Mom's lawyer. This isn't a bluff. If we stay past the deadline, she can file for a formal eviction." "She wouldn't—" "She can," he said quietly, "and you know she should." For a moment I saw it, the flicker of something real in his face, remorse, maybe even shame, and I almost reached for it. Almost. Then Clara's voice turned icy. "So what? We just go after everything, after all the generosity we've shown?" I raised an eyebrow. "Generosity." "David gave you this apartment," she snapped. "It was his money." And there it was, the lie she believed, the story she had been telling herself all along. I stepped forward, slowly, quietly. "No, Clara, you assumed it was his money. It wasn't. It was mine. An inheritance from my grandmother, money I saved for decades. Frank and I kept it quiet for David's sake. And when I bought this place, I bought it for me, no one else." She blinked. "You're lying." I opened the drawer and pulled out the deed, slammed it down in front of her. My name. Only mine. Clara backed away as if the paper were on fire. David sat down slowly, reading every line, his hand on his mouth. When he looked up at me, he looked like a boy again, lost, tired, frightened by the adult world he'd willingly ignored. "You knew this whole time," he said to Clara. "You told me it was safe to move in. You told me you handled it." Clara turned on him like a switchblade. "You never asked. You let your mother micromanage everything, and I had to—" "You stole from her," he said quietly, "and you lied to me about it." Silence, deep and cracking. Then he stood up. "I'll pack our things," he said, and he did. It was raining the day they left. Fitting, I suppose. She wore her pride like a raincoat, chin high, dragging her suitcase like it had betrayed her. He didn't look back. I didn't wave, didn't gloat. Just closed the door quietly and locked it. Then I walked to the balcony, breathed in the storm, and whispered to the wind, "You did it, Helen. You chose yourself." I turned off my phone, made tea, curled up with a book and the silence I'd fought for. And for the first time in years, it wasn't lonely. It was mine.